Hey Travis, how are you, man? It's good to see you.
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. You're looking good, man. Looking all right. I'm struggling with the quarantine stay at home hair right now. I need a haircut. I should probably go with the buzz look like you have going right now.
I actually cut my hair yesterday. I couldn't
Yeah.
stand it anymore. And it was like I gotta try giving myself a haircut, and it actually turned out um, slightly below average, I would say. So I was
well,
I was
well,
pretty
your
happy with
haircut
that.
might be my next step. If this goes on much longer, that might be where I'm heading there. So how are you and your family doing in this quarantine and the stay at home stuff here?
Yeah, it's actually been pretty good. I mean, we live in Florida, so we're outside a ton. We're playing a lot of baseball with the boys, hitting in the cages. Then we're like homeschooling, and kids have actually kind of gotten into running a little bit. So if
Okay.
they ever have like they ever got like too much energy built up, it's like, all right, kids, let's go run around the block. And
Well, I keep feel free to keep bringing up the nice weather that you're living in because here in Cleveland it was snowing the last 3 days and we're just stuck inside. But yeah, please keep talking about how nice it is and how you can go outside in Florida, man. That's great.
okay, well, thanks for that leeway because I didn't want to say much more, but since you brought it up, I actually got like a little bit of color on my forehead,
Oh, a
which is
little bit of sunburn.
nice.
Yeah,
We were
that's
outside a
nice,
lot
man.
yesterday, so yeah.
Yeah, great. Appreciate it, dude. I'm always so thankful for how you encourage me, man. That's great. So, but I'm glad you guys are doing well, man. I really am, and tell the boys and Amy that I said hi. So I would love to hear just in this conversation, love to hear about your relationship with Jesus and just how that started while you were playing baseball. But even before we get into some of that, we'd love to hear just what your life was like before your relationship with Jesus. Like, who was Travis Hafner before Jesus came into your life?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like my identity was definitely in baseball. My world really revolved around baseball, and I would say kind of like before I really had a strong relationship with Jesus, like I had kind of dealt with some injuries, and you go from being like a pretty good player to all of a sudden dealing with injuries and struggling with performance and things like that. And if that's your identity, it really affects you and really bothers you. And I had a hard time with that. So yeah, I would just say like baseball was without a doubt my number one. And um, yeah, so I'm just very thankful to have found Jesus when I did.
Yeah, so just like your whole world was around baseball, and is that even from like an early age, like baseball, everything was just kind of centered on baseball through, your playing days as well?
Yeah, I would say probably from the time I was like 4 or 5 years old, like that's all I wanted to do was play baseball. And even when you get to like college and the minor leagues, like you know, would spend crazy amounts of time during the day working out or watching video, and just spent like so much time in baseball that I mean, it really was like my identity.
Yeah. Wow. So so known you for a little while now, and uh I love your relationship with Jesus, and you encourage me quite a bit in my own relationship with Jesus. So if your whole world was kind of set around baseball, how did that relationship with Jesus get started? Like, what led up to that moment, and what did you begin to see change in your life then?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the Catholic Church as a young kid through high school, but again, there wasn't like a relationship with Jesus involved in that. And then once we got to the minor leagues, I went to a lot of like the baseball chapel sessions. I kind of really enjoyed them, but there really wasn't any action on my part. If anything, I went because I thought I might get a couple more hits that week
Yeah.
or something like that.
Well, you had a pretty good career, so maybe it did work work out. Not too bad.
But it really wasn't until 2013 I was a free agent for the first time. I signed with the Yankees, and we came down to Tampa. And the Laportas, really good friends of ours, invited us to church, and we went to church. My wife was Jewish, I was Catholic. Neither of us, I would say, were super strong in our faith, and um, we went to the church. We loved it. It was like a message that felt like it spoke right to us, and we kept going. And um, we just kind of got addicted to it. We love hearing the word of God and present it in a great way. And I just kind of took off and went to New York that year. Was surrounded by like Andy Pettit, Mariano Rivera, had George McGovern there, just some really
Yeah.
good role models in my life, and just had some really great influences, and just kind of, I knew that that was the direction I wanted to go with my life.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I love that. Uh, and that's interesting that uh, it took you going to New York City, to find that relationship with Jesus and be around people that were serious about it. I don't think a lot of people think necessarily of New York City being this deeply spiritual place. Probably has more reputation of some other things, but I think that just speaks to how God works in our lives and stuff and works through people. I love that,
Yeah,
man.
it was really interesting. Throughout the process, I mean, I wasn't like a huge fan of New York City. Like, I guess growing up in North Dakota, like I kind of like,
Slightly
my,
different. Cleveland
I'd
was
prefer
maybe
to not
more your
have,
speed. Yeah.
yeah, I'd prefer to not have a city with like several million people. But um, like during that process, I was kind of like reaching out to a lot of people and getting opinions on it. Um, I didn't have a whole lot of choices, but I kind of wanted to talk to people, and I wanted them to tell me what I wanted to hear. And I remember I wasn't even like very spiritual at the time, but one of the person I spoke to said, like, don't be afraid of what God's plan is for your life. Like, it's obvious that things are lining up for you to go to New York, and you're just, you know, you're trying to run from that for whatever reason. So don't be afraid of God's plan. And not being very religious at the time, for whatever reason, that just kind of hit me and was like, whoa, okay, like I guess we're
Yeah.
going to New York. And that's really where
Wow.
I found the Lord. So it was a pretty cool story to look back and think about that.
Oh, that's incredible. So let me ask you, was it tough um being newer in your faith, in your relationship with Jesus, living that out in New York, or because of like the travel schedule, maybe you didn't feel that as much? Or maybe
Um,
maybe what was it like living out your faith as a newer Christian and follower of Jesus in kind of the craziness of traveling and not being able to necessarily be connected um to one church or like a local church.
yeah, so we would watch our Tampa church online, but I remember on plane rides and stuff, Andy Pett would be like, "Here, watch this sermon." He'd just like feed me full of stuff to watch. Where
Yeah.
normally on plane rides, you're just sitting back there and having beers and playing games and stuff like that. So that was a big change. But I would say it was actually New York was a great situation for me to grow spiritually, just having those really good, strong role models around me. Um, and actually, too, like I was kind of the 25th man on the roster, so
Hmm.
you know I didn't really have to deal with media or anything like that. I just kind of could quietly go about my business, and um, yeah, it really worked out well. We kind of lived out in kind of in Westchester County, away from the city, so it was pretty quiet and mellow,
Yeah.
and worked out well. Mhm.
Oh, that's great, man. So what's life look like for you now? As you've been following Jesus for a number of years now, and how would you say like you're seeing him at work in your life?
Yeah, I mean, it's we talk about the sanctification process, and just like it's a constant, you're just constantly reading the word every day, hanging out with people, just trying to grow your relationship with Christ. And Jesus is just like constantly molding me and my family, and we're just
Mm.
trying to become more and more like him. But it's great. Like you feel like you're living the way that God designed you to live. Like you're trying to stay in His will and do things His way. And on the surface, it seems like, okay, that's going to be very hard to do, or maybe not what I should do, because all of us, I think, are kind of selfish. But when you really do live that way, although it's definitely not all the time. I mean, we're still massive works in progress. But when you do those things to like honor God, you can definitely see like really good things happen. And I think that's when you really experience His joy.
Right. And that what you're saying there is, uh, may even go back to that identity piece that you mentioned earlier with your identity, for as long as you can remember being baseball, and your world being around baseball. There's that pivot, that shift that takes place, that now that identity being in Jesus, I think there's that hope and that peace that comes with that. That's something that probably baseball couldn't fully offer you, right?
Right. I mean, when your identity is baseball, I mean, if you win or lose the game, that's going to determine your mood or your joy or your happiness, just based on that. Like, I can tell you, if I went 4 for 4 with 4 home runs and we lost the game, I was in a bad mood.
Hmm.
So just it's tough to live like that. I mean, in big league baseball, you're at least going to lose 60 games a year. So I mean, it's, if you think about it, it's kind of unfair to your family. Like, hey, there's 60 times this year, I'm
Wow.
just going to be
Yeah.
in a bad mood, and you can do nothing about it just because we lost the game. Which sounds crazy, but I think having a relationship with Christ just kind of gives you like a better perspective on things. Like, losing a baseball game isn't the worst thing in the world. Like, there are bigger things and bigger things going on in the world. Um, and you tend to look at things from an eternal perspective and see the importance of that, which is really important.
Wow, that's so well said. And like speaking of the important stuff, one of the things that I feel like in our conversations and texts that we have, a lot of it's not only centered around Jesus, but our relationship with our wives and how we're doing, as husbands, and how we're doing as fathers, and I love like how much effort, you put into intentionality into doing everything that you possibly can to be a good husband and to be a good father. And so with that, like what's one of the things that um, God is currently teaching you about what it means or what it looks like to be a good husband or to be a good father? Maybe even more so in this quarantine time where it's just your boys are around you all the time, and it's probably more instead of Amy being around you, it's probably more you just being around Amy all the time. So know that we're praying for her in the middle of it.
I was gonna say, you get my texts, and they're usually something along the lines of like, I'm a hot mess, and you're playing like psychiatrist half the time.
Get out, man. Get out.
um, but I would say, like, through this quarantine time, it's like really a time where I don't want to look back in a couple months or however long that is and say like, man, I had this great opportunity to be with my boys or my family, and I was just in a bad mood the whole time, and I let it pass by and got nothing accomplished. So I mean, I guess I would say I really feel like God is challenging me to be like the family leader through this time, and like I can kind of set the tone for the whole family. Like, if I'm in a good mood, um, I think my boys are going to be in a good mood, and my wife will be in a good mood. And if they're down, I mean, everybody's going to go through periods during this time where they get frustrated, they have fear, whatever. Like, it's a challenging time, and you know, allowing them grace and allowing them to like have those moments, but at the same time, like trying to pick everybody up and like, hey kids, let's get outside, like making sure that we're praying as a family, and just trying to be encouraging and build the family up and kind of be the leader through this time, has really been an area where God's challenging me. And every morning I wake up and it's like, all right, God, like, you're gonna have to like get me through this again, and give me the strength to kind of lead my family through this.
Hmm. I love that. I love the intentionality that you bring, and I think that perspective on getting to the point where in the future where you look back over this quarantine time, and you either have two options: either I wasted it, that additional time and opportunity with your wife, with your boys, or you can make the most of it right now, so that you look back with no regrets. So I love that. I think that's an invaluable perspective on it, man. So
Yeah, like how much
yeah, go
how
ahead.
much do how much do we really have like this amount of time to spend with our families?
Right,
I mean,
right,
we may never have this again as like a dad or a husband.
right.
And
And not just in the quarantine time, but like, why don't we have that perspective for our entire life? Like when all said and done, like, do we want to look back at our lives and all these years that we got to spend with our kids and with our wife? Do we want to look back with with regret on stuff. No, I think like you can
Right.
take that perspective on quarantine and extend it out for, our entire legacy while we're here on this earth with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like maybe one other thing I feel like God is working with me on is like when I'm with my family, like be with my family. Don't be, you know, on my phone a ton or, kind of focus on something else. Like when I'm with them, like make sure that I'm really with them and being locked in on that. So like if I'm kind of my attention's divided, then I get very frustrated with my kids. But if I can like lock in on them, then I have a lot more patience with them.
Right. And that was something you were just telling me about that you were doing the other day, which challenged me. It's probably something that I need to do. So I just appreciate that about you, man. So so yeah, as we kind of wrap up this conversation here in a little bit, I do want to ask you at least like one kind of baseball question here. So if you look back over your baseball career, like, well, it's a two-part question. Like, what's one of your favorite baseball memories or experiences that you got to have? But then on the backside of that, what's also been one of your favorite memories or experiences that you've had in life since giving your life to Jesus?
Yeah, I would say baseball wise, like I only got to go to the playoffs one time in 2007, but just that kind of whole experience, like my parents were both there for the playoffs. We got to beat the Yankees. Uh, we beat them first round. So just kind of the whole experience of the playoffs and then being one game away from the World Series, like, you come up short, but just that whole experience of being in the playoffs was incredible. And just to see the level of intensity that the games went to from like a regular season game and just how intense every pitch is and seeing the crowd get into it. And that was awesome. And then favorite part since I've been a Christian, I would say there's lots of favorite parts. And it's almost like, there's always something new. But I would have to say, like, I'm in a Bible study. I love that. Like, I love going to church. But I think when you're able to share the gospel with somebody or invite them to church, and then you kind of see them just fall in love with the word of God, have a relationship with Jesus and take off, just kind of being a part of that and then you know, seeing Jesus work on somebody's life and transform their life, you just kind of sit back and you say like, wow, that was amazing. Like to see
Yeah.
where that person was and to see what Jesus did in their life was incredible. So just to kind of witness a lot of things that
Hmm.
God is doing around us is incredible. And then like to have those experiences where he uses you, like he works through you to like impact somebody else is pretty special.
Yeah. Isn't that, I've told people that's like, um, to me, like that's the most addicting thing ever, almost in a good and healthy way. That I think we can all acknowledge that God doesn't need us to do anything to accomplish any of his plans for the world, but the fact that he chooses to use us, to help point other people towards him, or he uses us in his plan of redemption, in different parts of this world. What an adventure and what a privilege and honor that we get to be a part of that the God of the universe would let us be a part of that. It's incredible. That's so good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So just in closing here, what's something that you would say to somebody who maybe be watching this, and especially in these times right now with the coronavirus and times of uncertainty or maybe even fear and anxiety for many people, what would you say to them, that to those people that may need some hope or may need some encouragement right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's obviously like lots of Bible verses that different people are leaning on. I would say in this time, like I have like three. I mean, there's more than three, but three that kind of like keep replaying through my head, and um, definitely Proverbs 4:23 talks about guarding your heart. And I notice like if I'm in the news too much, or like if I get if I'm just watching all this stuff and some of the news isn't very encouraging, you're kind of like your mind wanders like how bad can this get? Like see the economy going bad, you see like the total of people who have been infected and you're like, this is crazy. And just really kind of limiting that amount of news that I take in. And like if I focus on the word of God and I fill my mind with that, it makes like a huge difference and allows me to like be a better dad and be a better husband as well. So one, really guarding my heart is big, and then two,
So good.
this has been a big one. In Matthew 6:34, talks about don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself, and each day has enough trouble on its own. So very similar to the one that we just talked about. Not getting too far ahead of myself and thinking about what could happen when we're going to play baseball again. You know, all this stuff that I can't control.
Yeah,
Just focusing on today. What can I do today? Um, and that's being a good dad, a good husband, and just trying to love on people and serve people the best I can. If I can do that, like it's really all I can, really all that I can do. And then Second Timothy 1:7 says, "For the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline." So, God doesn't want us to be fearful in this situation. Um, He really wants us to like love on people and really be a light during this time. Just think about what an impact you can make now when there are so many people that, whether they're sick or they've lost their jobs or they're just nervous and fearful. Like, you can be kind of that voice speaking to people and sharing the gospel and the hope of Jesus Christ. And it's, it's a tough time, obviously, but it's like a great time to kind of speak truth and love into people's lives.
man, that's so good. When's the next time you're going to be preaching? You need to start doing this more often, man. That was good stuff, man. I appreciate it. Well, I appreciate you, Travis, just taking the time to have this conversation. And like we were saying, hopefully it just brings some hope and some encouragement to some people that may need it right now. So, all right, brother. Take care.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yep.
We'll see you.
All right. Bye.